Welcome to the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this behind-the-scenes look at PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. Here we talk to the key players at PETA and the movement and ask them about how animal rights change their lives and how they stay motivated to make the world a better place for animals. To kick things off, we talked to PETA President and co-founder Ingrid Newkirk in episode number 1, and she talked, among other things, about her passionate disapproval of no-kill shelters. Check that out and all our links to previous episodes on our podcast player on PETA.org or wherever you podcast. And because we are really just beginning, don't forget to check us out on iTunes. Please rate and review. It helps spread the word that PETA has a podcast talking about the issues you care about. But this episode is a special one because it's Oscar weekend. 2018 is the 90th time Oscar is being passed around for the best in moviedom. But which movies made the mark when it comes to the treatment of animals? If you stay around to the end of the movie credits like I do, there's a label that assures that no animals were harmed in the making of a film. What's that mean? Not much, says Lisa Lange, PETA's Senior Vice President of Communications.
No, we cannot rely on the AHA. They've gotten worse, not better. So what we're relying on instead is a kinder Hollywood, kinder filmmakers and writers and audiences.
I talked to Lisa about how the AHA label, the American Humane Association's mark, is empty and meaningless. But PETA is honoring movie makers who are making a difference, not with an Oscar, but an Oscat. Here's my interview with PETA's Lisa Lange. So, Lisa, it's so good to have you on the PETA podcast, especially around Oscars time. And I know that you're in the LA area and you're looking at making sure that the movie industry is doing its best for the animals. So it's the Academy Awards airing Sunday. PETA has its own version of the Oscars, huh?
Yes. It was really exciting. This is our first annual Oscats Awards. And the reason we came up with the idea is because so much good is going on in Hollywood with regard to the use of animals and positive storylines about animals that we thought, we really need to start acknowledging these filmmakers and actors and writers for really moving ahead in the right direction. Most people have heard the horror stories about animals being abused on movie sets. And so much has changed there, and largely it's due to pressure from groups like PETA, but also consumers who are saying, I'm not going to go to your movie if, for example, as happened in the movie A Dog's Purpose, animals are mistreated in the movie, in the making of the movie. So we had some fun and came up with different awards for some wonderful films, that many of which are also nominated for Oscars. And so it's very exciting time.
So let me get into the specifics, but first, this idea that PETA has had an LA office for some time now, and you've observed the business, it has been kind of a dramatic departure. I mean, it's been the growth toward a more humane type of filmmaking and humane stories, or where animals are treated and depicted. It really has changed more dramatically, say, within the last 5-10 years? Or is that just me thinking?
No, I think that is an accurate observation. It feels like there was a sea change and things started to happen very, very quickly. I think overall we're seeing that with animal rights. It's, people are vegan like they've never been before. We've seen companies like Ringling Brothers go out of business because people just reject the notion that animals like elephants should be beaten for our entertainment. And of course, Hollywood has come along as well. But I do agree with you. I think in the last 5 years, we've seen probably some of the most significant changes. And it's very, very encouraging. Technology helps a lot, but really they only pushed for the technology because we pushed them to get to the technology. There's a demand for great movies that don't harm animals. And you look at Star Wars, The Last Jedi. So we gave them an Oscat for their amazing CGI work. And also for the storyline. They incorporated a few animal rights storylines. But, you don't have to use an animal in a film anymore to get the same feeling. And the way they're able to create everything from monkeys to dinosaurs, like in Jumanji, which also got an Oscat for us. It's all created on the computer, which is a beautiful thing. It also employs a lot more people in Hollywood to be able to work on these things. And not one hair on an animal's head is harmed for a really great film. So CGI, which is computer-generated imagery, has done a lot for animals, but it's also really come from the kindness of filmmakers and writers and actors and crew out there who have been calling PETA when they see abuse on the film set, which is what we encourage people to do, is if you see abuse, document it, call us, and we'll pounce. And every time that happens, for example, with A Dog's Purpose, which I referred to earlier, someone filmed a dog being shoved into a pool of fast-moving water. This dog was desperate to get out of the water. And when that video was made public, we made a big deal about it. And as a result, the studio had to cancel the premiere. The opening weekend, which is really the indicator of how a movie's going to do, suffered terribly in profits. And that is a direct result of people saying, I'm not going to go to your movie if you hurt an animal to make it.
Yeah.
And that sends a really strong message to the rest of Hollywood.
Well, it's all about money, right? And it's all about pleasing the audience. The way they pre-screen movies to see audience reaction, to get to laughs or to dramatic scenes. How they treat animals should be part of that equation as well. So, so let's talk about the Oscats. First of all, the name Oscats. Who came up with that?
A couple of clever colleagues of mine. It was just it was a fun thing. I think it's perfectly representative of what we're doing, and obviously it makes people think of the Oscars. So, we presented them. We let all the winners know, and they were very excited about it. So that was fun.
And did they get, instead of an Oscar, do they get a cat? What is the statuette?
Yeah, well, we are making the statuettes, and there's kind of a picture of them on our website at PETA.org. You can go to see what the Oscats look like. But we let all the filmmakers and the winners know that they had won an Oscat, and the response was really great. I think people like to be, acknowledged when they do something good. We are a protest organization, we're an activist organization, but we do so much behind the scenes in working with corporations, and in this case, in working with filmmakers. And we think equally, you need the carrot and stick approach. People need to be acknowledged for the good things they do. We encourage people, for example, to award filmmakers by going to the films that don't use animals, by going to the films that have positive animal rights messages.
All right. So how many Oscars did you hand out?
We handed out about a dozen this year, and we're going to be flexible. It kind of is going to depend year to year on how many good films there were, how many good storylines there were. But we feel certain from the response we got this year that it's going to be a much sought after award during award season. So we'll see. I mean, this year we had a category called the Pig's Pick, which we gave to Okja, which was a beautiful movie on Netflix that promoted the humane treatment of animals who are ordinarily killed for their flesh. And, if there is not a pig-centric movie next year, we won't have a pig pick. We may have a donkey pick, or we may have a rat pick or something. So we're having fun with it.
Yeah, one of the species will be upset if they're left out, I'm sure.
Yeah, we have to make sure that we spread the wealth there.
Yeah, and so, all right, so you had the pig pick. What other films did you take note of?
Well, we took note of a really lovely scene in 3 Billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. For anyone who's seen it, this is not going to spoil, or who hasn't seen it, this is not going to spoil the film for you. But as most people know, Frances McDormand plays a kind of a hard-edged character that is heartbroken over the death of her daughter. And she's a tough cookie. But I think the filmmaker wanted you to know that there's also a softness there. And one of the mechanisms the writer used in it, is there's a lovely scene where there is a bug who is fallen on his back and on his hard shell and can't right himself. And Frances McDormand walks up to the bug, and all of us animal lovers kind of like took a breath, like, is she going to kill this animal? Instead, she just gently turns him over and rights himself, and so that he can right himself. And it's just this lovely scene that wants you to know that she has a softness underneath all this pain and torture that she's been through. And we noticed. And so we gave an award to her. And we also gave an award to Doug Jones, who plays the quote-unquote monster in Shape of Water. It's a lovely bit of acting that really beautifully, and writing and directing, I may add, and that's why Guillermo del Toro also got an Oscar, that really allows the audience to see just how painful it is to be treated like you're nothing, chained and abused because you're different, or because someone wants to own you and exploit you, like happens with dogs who are tethered in all weather extremes that we see every year, and we try to help, and elephants who are chained in the circus. So that also was that film, that actor, and that director were given Oscats as well.
And what was their category?
Several of them, Best Director and Best Actor. So for Doug Jones and Guillermo del Toro, who is such a kind man. For anyone who's seen the film, there's just a quick scene, and it doesn't ruin the movie, but where someone's eating a lobster, and they refer, I don't remember the exact line, but they refer to how the animal will clamber inside the pot to try to get out. And it obviously came from someone with some pretty nice sensibilities. And and we noticed, and so we thought we need to publicly acknowledge these people for their kindness.
Yeah, one of the things I love the fact that Guillermo del Toro is getting attention, but you see, because I'm a Guillermo, I pronounce it the Filipino Asian way. He's sort of like messing up my pronunciation thing, but that's all right, because his film is, if you look at it, it's kind of an allegory for a sense of all people who are mistreated, of all things, right? Species, humans, everyone. And it's a powerful message. And, it's funny. It's not funny, but it's great that PETA is able to acknowledge this in awards like this, because most people, when they see the Oscars, and it seems like this film is going to get a lot of Oscars on Sunday, they may not see the link to the animals as readily. Or I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think you're right. I think those of us have been in the animal rights movement for as long as I have, for example. When you see, and I remember another older movie, Edward Scissorhands, when it came out years ago, that must have been 20 years ago, maybe more. I remember thinking, wow, that is such an animal rights message. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it's just this creature with scissors for hands, played by Johnny Depp so brilliantly. And people at first really love him because he's different, and then they try to find ways to exploit him. And then when they can't control him, they want to destroy him. And I thought, wow, that's what people do to animals. And so there are, I know I'm probably looking for it more than the average person, but anything, I think, that encourages kindness to people, to animals, and really encourages empathy, which I think is what Shape of Water does. But Shape of Water also is a fun movie. It's a beautifully shot movie. So you're not going to sit down to a film and feel lectured at or anything like that. It's just gorgeous, and it's so creative. But it does really promote. Sorry about that.
It's a Guillermo del Toro alarm.
Yes,
Every time
exactly.
he gets mentioned, the fire trucks run. And that's just a thing in Hollywood.
I wouldn't be surprised, actually, but.
Yeah. Well, or actually, every time I mispronounce his name by saying it the Filipino way. But really, it's funny. We have a big film like Shape of Water that's going to, it looks from all indications is going to make a major splash at the Oscars. But, you mentioned the Frances McDormand scene. It's little scenes too get Oscars, and So tell me about some of the other Oscats you gave out.
Well, we gave one for costume design to Blade Runner 2049. You know, the coat that Ryan Gosling wears in it looks like a leather jacket, and it isn't. It isn't. We wrote to the costume designer when we heard there was an interview that they did that they said, no, it's cotton and synthetic. And so we gave an award to them for that. You know, that is something I think he literally wears through the whole film. And we love Ryan Gosling. Everyone loves Ryan Gosling. He's wonderful, and he's also very kind. I mean, he's done. He's helped PETA promote. You know, he wrote a letter to KFC Canada asking them to eliminate some of the worst abuses on chickens, and as everybody knows, he's been a very kind dog dad, adopting dogs and giving them wonderful homes, and so. He's just a good guy all the way around. So it was fun for us to be able to acknowledge him in that way. So that was a good one. We also just gave a fun award to Darren Aronofsky because for Mother, and I know that sounds random, but we in part did it because there are no animals in the film. And that we love, and it didn't have an animal theme either. But we love Darren Aronofsky because he's an animal rights guy. He made the film Noah using no animals, which was wonderful. And he made Mother without using animals either. So we had some fun there. And he seemed pleased to get the acknowledgement.
Yeah. And he did Black Swan. They just abused ballerinas, but fictionally, I
but
think.
No swans.
No swans. No swans. Any other surprises? Any other things that people say, oh, wow, I didn't know that was, had a theme or animal theme or a kindness theme.
We gave also an acknowledgement to Lady Bird, and that was another fun one. It was because it had bird in the name, and because Saoirse Ronan, Saoirse Ronan spoke out against Irish fur farms, asking that they be closed. So she's just got a huge heart, and we all love Saoirse Ronan. And then we recently worked with Laurie Metcalf on an ad that hasn't come out yet, so I'm not going to tell you too much about it, but we thought let's, for those reasons, let's give Lady Bird a little bit of acknowledgement.
How about craft services? Are you going to give craft services award for serving vegan food or something like that? Or no, I guess not.
That kind of acknowledgement would go to filmmakers like Mike White and Rick Linklater. Mike White makes sure that his sets you have a lot of vegan food, if not only vegan food. There's a wonderful video director named Dave Myers who always makes sure that his sets are either completely vegan or serve a lot of vegan food. So we are starting to see a change there. And when we hear of it, I believe James Cameron's sets are vegan too. We haven't confirmed that directly with him, but he's another very famous vegan who knows that the way to end the environmental devastation that we're seeing worldwide and climate change is going to be through adopting a vegan diet and doing away with animal agriculture. So he walks the walk. He's another filmmaker who really walks the walk and has a new film coming out, a documentary called Game Changers, about athletes and how vegan diets have made them stronger and faster and just overall more accomplished in their various sports. So yeah, I mean, really, the Oscats are wide open. So anyone listening who has done something great in a film or a screenplay or on a set, get in touch with us.
Great. And so this thing about the treatment of animals, it's always been an issue in Hollywood. And just within the last couple of years, everyone has always just gone with the stamp of approval that has been the de facto standard. And I'm talking about the American Humane label. But a few years back, the Hollywood Reporter did a big expose. Is the AHA or American Humane label, have they reformed? Is it better? Can people rely on that?
No, not at all. And that's why we go directly to filmmakers and screenwriters and directors and actors themselves, because you cannot rely at all on the American Humane Association. And I'll give you a couple of examples. There's a film that came out a couple of years ago called 3 Flights Up. And there's a shocking scene where a dog is shivering in a cage, and another scene where a dog is flipped over on his back, tied down, and put into an MRI machine. And I saw the film on TV, not expecting it, wrote to the AHA right away and said, "What gives? This is not a CGI dog. How was this shot?" And they said the dog didn't mind. It was a very quick scene. And it's anyone who has a dog knows they don't want to be tied down on their backs and put into an MRI machine. And so there was an AHA monitor on set. They cleared the film for it. And the same thing was true several years ago. You probably remember the HBO series called Luck that was all about horse racing.
Yeah.
3 horses died during the filming of that. And the AHA monitor was also on the set for that as well. A Peter Jackson film, a Hobbit film filmed in New Zealand, dozens of animals died, and there was an AHA monitor on set. So no, we cannot rely on the AHA. They've gotten worse, not better. So what we're relying on instead is a kinder Hollywood, kinder filmmakers and writers and audiences who reject any films like, for example, unfortunately, the Swedish movie called The Square, Swedish-American movie, used a real chimpanzee, which is unheard of in this day and age when it seems that everybody knows that to get a chimpanzee to perform, they have to be ripped away from their mothers when they're tiny babies, and that important bond is broken, which affects both the mother and the baby, that these animals are typically beaten to force them to perform because a young chimpanzee is as playful and as distracted as a human child would be, and on movie sets, time is money. And so these animals are treated horribly during training, and then they're retired, quote unquote, at the age of 8 because they're way too strong to work with anymore, and most of them end up in roadside zoos. And this is commonly known now in the entertainment industry. And so for the movie The Square to use an ape in their film is so tone deaf and so completely out of touch with how Hollywood, the direction that Hollywood is moving.
But they are moving in a more humane direction. But how can consumers, like you said, you said the AHA is not getting better. The stamp is still there. How can consumers protest or make either AHA? I guess, do you just cut out AHA and just go directly to the filmmakers? Because some of them will still see AHA as, well, if we do that, we're covered.
It's true. It's true. And we do hear that from filmmakers. They say, don't worry, the AHA was on set. And we respond saying, no, we are worried. And here's why. And we will often send the Hollywood Reporter article so that they can see. We also did an investigation at arguably the largest animal supplier in Hollywood called Birds and Animals Unlimited. And this was just a year ago when we did the investigation. And what we revealed in the Hollywood Reporter, again, broke that story. It was horrible. Most people think if there's a dog in a film, that probably the dog goes home with the trainer and sleeps at the bottom of the bed like our dogs do. And that's just simply not the case in most cases. What we found at BAU were animals, dogs, for example, who were kept in kennel-like conditions outside with no blankets for warmth, kept overnight in 40-degree weather. We found, and we're told, our investigator was told by managers that a couple of cats needed to be used in movies, and they felt the cats were too heavy, so they restricted their food for several days, essentially making them go hungry, which is very dangerous to do with cats. The owl that was used, that we were told by the company was used in Harry Potter movies, was kept in a cage so dirty it hadn't been cleaned in 6 weeks, which is illegal and unethical. And the stories go on and on from there. And the thing is, most filmmakers don't go to the animal suppliers. And the USDA is certainly not inspecting them like they should. And the AHA doesn't cover where the animals live or where they're dumped after they're no longer used. And so our investigation revealed to people exactly what goes on behind the scenes. And so we're basically putting the control into the hands of filmmakers, but also the audience. and urging people, if you know an animal is used in a film, don't go.
Most people don't stay to the credits. I'm one of the weird ones who stay to the end of the credits to make sure the AHA label at least is on there. But it's an empty thing. It's an empty symbol. And
it is.
And they shouldn't feel good about walking out the theater on the assurance of the AHA label.
No, and and people can write to filmmakers. It's what we do. You know, when for example, one of my favorite movies of the year was Call Me By Your Name. And there's a scene in the film with a fish that they've taken out of water. It's a very quick throwaway scene that was so not necessary in what is otherwise, to me, one of the most gorgeous films ever made. And I was so sad to see that because it really looked like a real fish. And so I wrote and said, congratulations on a spectacular movie, but can you tell us how you shot this scene? And they got back to us right away saying, please know that the fish's, welfare was uppermost in our minds, and we only shot the scene twice, and he didn't suffer for a second, which isn't, of course, true, because the minute you take them out of water, they start gasping for air and suffocating, which we communicated to them. They were very nice in their response. We said, in the future, we will help you get an animatronic fish, as has been used in, many other films that are fish-focused. And so that communication was good, but, anyone can have that communication. Or if they don't know how to write to filmmakers, you can always write to PETA and ask, how was this film shot? And if we haven't heard about it, we'll inquire. And so maybe we'll see that film win something special on Sunday. We may. I mean, it's up for best film. But you're partial to Shape of Water, it sounds. For animal reasons, yeah, I am partial to Shape of Water. I'm also partial to Phantom Thread. Which doesn't have one animal in it, but it didn't get an Oscat. It's just that I loved the film so much, so I'm just throwing it out there. But we'll see what happens. There could be big, huge confusion like there was last year, or it can run smoothly.
Lisa Lange, PETA's Senior Vice President of Communications, on the Oscats, honoring the best in Hollywood when it comes to the treatment of animals, and how you just can't put stock on that AHA No Animals Harmed label these days. Incidentally, point of disclosure, my wife Kathy Guillermo is a PETA executive and worked on exposing the abuse on HBO's Luck. And that's it for our special Oscars and Oscats show. You can contact us at PETA.org. Don't forget to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. It'll help us reach more people and let them know why it's important to speak out and take action for the animals. Our music is provided by Carbonworks. Check them out on YouTube. And join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo.